Series 4, Episode 3. Make sure you carry on listening, because it's going to get spicy. Right, so, Harry, tell these beautiful listeners once again what we have got coming up on the show this week.
Well, we're going to have a cheeky review of last week's Premier League games and give a full preview of the upcoming ones and what we think about the team's chances this season.
So, Harry, you know how much I love Sheffield United, and, well, what an ending when Billy Sharp scored that 90th minute equaliser against Bournemouth. I've told you last week they've got a chance of staying up. What did you make of that performance? Did Bournemouth really look like the team that could push for the top 10 this season?
Billy, what a man. He came on, he made the difference. Bournemouth, though, they actually looked quite good for most of the game. They looked like the stronger team. Of course, it was the 87th minute when Sharp scored that goal. But Bournemouth looked a lot stronger in midfield. Billing was good. He was piercing through the defence. He was looking like he was bringing the ball forward. He wasn't just holding it together. So maybe he's going to offer a lot more than what people expected. He was Huddersfield's best midfielder by quite a way for a lot of last season. So, yeah, Bournemouth looked like the real deal. Maybe it's going to be a mid-table finish.
Okay, so obviously Eddie Howe, it's a big season for him because Eddie Howe is getting into that kind of calibre of manager now that because he's done such a good job with Bournemouth, there is going to be the slight chance that a bigger job's going to coming for him. And, you know, I was surprised that, you know, when Everton appointed Marco Silva that they didn't look at someone, or maybe when Watford appointed Javier Gracia that they didn't look for someone like Eddie Howe. But do you think Eddie Howe will be at Bournemouth for much longer? Do you think he could take them even all the way to the Europa League this season? Because if you saw the way they played with Lerma and Billing, and they've got Callum Wilson, who, if he stays fit, he's going to be a lot better all season. And, you know, David Brooks and the player of Ryan Fraser getting even better season by season. They are looking more like a Europa League team. So, obviously, Wolves have done it. First season of asking, surely Bournemouth aren't too far off them.
I would say probably not. Mostly because Callum Wilson, although he's good, and I like seeing him for England because he brings a lot of pace, I don't think that the striker position is quite as good as like Wolves. They've got Raul, and they've also got a much better shape than Bournemouth. Their five at the back is so effective. You know, you've got players like Johnny at left back who he brings the ball forward beautifully. He always seems to get a good cross in. He's good at tracking back. I don't know if Bournemouth really have quite as good fullbacks as well. And, you know, you've got other teams as well to consider, like Everton, definitely not West Ham, and also Leicester, who are of that similar calibre. And I think that Bournemouth, they're looking good, and that is definitely the next step for them to join that kind of tier of club. But yeah, it's going to be a long season, so it's possible. Who knows?
So here's a question that I would like to propose for Jack and Harry: the use of VAR, whether it should be just the umpire's call or whether a captain on each side should just the referee's call. You don't think the captain should have a chance to have one appeal? Maybe a change to how VAR is used. Do you think there are any viable options?
Well, personally, I think VAR should work very much like it does in, say, tennis or NFL, where each manager has two flags per like half, and you know, once they've like tennis, they have 3 challenges per set. Once they've used up those challenges, they can't. I mean, that would be an interesting and fun way of bringing it in. But maybe that defeats the whole object that VAR is there for, and that's to clear up the decisions which in real time referees can't see. Not the stupid decisions like, was that throw in 5 minutes ago, but the goal defining decisions, the red card defining decisions. Now, it's got to be, this is the first season it's been tried and tested in the Premier League. So when we saw the Manchester City versus West Ham, when it was offside by like a millimetre on the shoulder, you've got to really kind of take into consideration, is the player really gaining an advantage with his shoulder over the other player? Now, in real time, the momentum he gets, he probably is. But when you slow it down and use the VAR, when you look at it, it's too much of a tight call. And so, you know, we had goal line technology, and that's fantastic because that clears up the yes or no, black or white. Is it a goal? Is it not? VAR is very much, it's not black and white. It's colourful in a way because it's then up to the referee how he uses VAR to make his decision in the game. So it's going to be tried and tested. You know, I believe we will eventually get it right. I mean, I do like the idea of the challenges, but maybe that's not appropriate for football and what VAR is there for, like like it is in tennis. But it works in tennis if the players use their challenges and there's a controversial call, they don't get to make that call at the end of the day, and it certainly brings an edge of excitement. So I wouldn't be against seeing that in the Premier League. I just think it would be a couple of years before we even see anything proposed like that. But Harry, what do you think of it? Do you think I think VAR will eventually come good, but obviously it's still got a long way to go.
Yeah, there's no need for a challenges-based system at all because every single, well, not even just big decision anymore. It's like kind of medium decisions and the big decisions gets checked anyway in a balanced way. So everything that could potentially be wrong is checked regardless. So you don't need a challenge system because then it would just be every little thing, and then the game really would be a bit like American football, stopping every 5 seconds. So there is absolutely no need for a challenges thing. I get the idea, and before VAR that maybe would have been a good idea, but now we have it. It's just about allowing that to develop, getting strong teams looking at it, making sure the referees are making those right calls. It's just got to evolve. It's only just started, so we've got to just give it time.
So going back to Chelsea, obviously, Harry, you said that you felt they played well under Lampard, and I probably agree. And a prime example of where Lampard will really do well at Chelsea is how his team reacted in the Super Cup final against Liverpool. And although they lost on penalties in the end, my God, Chelsea looked a completely different team to that Manchester United performance. He brought back in Kante, and I felt that did Chelsea wonders because he can not only drive forward along with Jorginho, he can actually sit back and actually break the ball down in midfield, which is exactly why Kante won the league with Leicester, and exactly why Chelsea bought him the season after, because exactly what he can do sitting in front of that back four. Now, obviously, Olivier Giroud looked... people underestimate Olivier Giroud because of his time at Arsenal, but he is genuinely a top European striker. And when you have him in your team, you've always got a chance of scoring. Yes, he may not score 25 goals a season, but he'll get you 15 to 20, which could be the most important goals of your life. And for Chelsea, it's certainly more than Morata got them or Sidwell. So, obviously, they took it 2-2 all the way to penalties, and unfortunately didn't make it with Tammy Abraham's penalty being saved. But it's a young and not necessarily inexperienced, but it's the youngest Chelsea squad there's been for a while. So I think people are going to be patient with Chelsea this season, and they're certainly not going to be expected to go all the way. And I think it would be unfair for Lampard to get even for Lampard to even be contemplated to be losing his job come February if Chelsea are 8th in the league, because whatever job he's doing, it's going to take 2, maybe even 3 years to get Chelsea back to the top of the Premier League. But there's our thoughts on a couple of the games from last week. But let's move on to everybody's favourite part of the show, and that is our previews, where we come up with our mad and balmy predictions for the upcoming game week. And so on Saturday we start at 12:30 with Arsenal versus Burnley. The team Arsenal who want to fight for top 4 versus Burnley, who looked like they could scrape into the top 10 because they had a great performance against Southampton last week. Harry, what do you make of this fixture? Could Burnley surprise again and come away from the Emirates with all 3 points?
They definitely could. You see this with a lot of the smaller teams. At the start of the season, they can put together a bit of a run. Huddersfield, when they first came up into the Premier League, they did that. West Brom in that same season, they did that. It's always possible, even against the big teams. So I think, considering the form they're in after that first game, the opener, they're definitely going to feel like they can do something to Arsenal, particularly with that very weak defence and wasteful midfield. We were talking about Xhaka, how he's a real weakness in that midfield, and he only proved it against Newcastle for me. He was so sloppy for a lot of the game, and I could see Burnley actually getting something out of this. Barnes, he's becoming more and more clinical. You've got other players to bear in mind. Goodmanson, he's got pace, he's got ability, he's got great dribbling skills. I think that Burnley could get something out of this game. I'm actually going to go 1-1.
Okay, so it's going to be a tough game, obviously, for Burnley, but with Arsenal bringing in their new signings, they've got David Luiz, who's arguably going to stay. I read an article today saying that David Luiz should be made Arsenal captain for the upcoming season. And, as an experienced player, you wouldn't say it's a bad shout. And, who else are you going to give it to? Xhaka? You do have questions over who you can give that captaincy to in that Arsenal team. And David Luiz certainly wouldn't be a bad shout, and he's certainly not going to go to Bordeaux and do his bloody stupid transfer announcement video. Obviously, Arsenal are going to want to make a massive impact at home. Obviously, they beat Newcastle at St James's Park with a lucky, almost Aubameyang goal. But, it's great that he's got off the mark already. He's certainly going to be one of the most clinical strikers in the Premier League this season. And, he could be a problem for Nick Pope in the Burnley goal. But, what a great result it would be for Burnley if they could get something from the game. Even a point, Sean Dyche would certainly take that. Because, come the end of the season, points like that in the big games are huge for teams like Burnley. And, I don't really think Burnley should be a surprise for top 10 anymore. They got Europa League the other season. Yes, they had a poor season last season, but you've got to think that it was an interesting Premier League season last season. It was kind of, nobody really expected anything really nobody expected certainly Liverpool to be chasing Manchester City all the way to the end. So, I think Burnley will have a solid season, not much of a roller coaster, but certainly it could get very interesting in the later ends of the season. But for me, I think I might agree with you, 1-1 for me in Arsenal. Burnley, Aston Villa, Bournemouth. Aston Villa, of course, coming off that defeat from Tottenham, but they're at home at Villa Park where they were fantastic last season in the Championship. Bournemouth, another tough game for them. How will Bournemouth fare away from home? They didn't have the best away record last season. They were very good at getting points at home, and that's been the same for Bournemouth since they got into the Premier League. But Aston Villa are very good at home against a team which aren't necessarily the best on the travels. So Aston Villa, for me, are going to be wanting to make a massive impact at Villa Park. Jack Grealish leading the team out for the first time in the Premier League at Villa Park. And I do think Aston Villa could come away with something like a 2-0 win. Harry, what do you make of it?
Well, first of all, congratulations to Jack Grealish. He set a new Premier League record, 19 losses in a row. So, well done. And guess what? Time for number 20. I think, no, seriously, I do think they will lose. Villa Park will be buzzing, obviously. But Bournemouth, for me, against Sheffield United, did look extremely physical. Their midfield was strong. Up front, they've got options. You were mentioning Ryan Fraser. He just seems to be getting better and better. He's becoming such a sharp winger. He's always on his toes. He's always there. And yeah, the defence is pretty solid. I think that is probably where a lot of the weakness lies. But players like Nathan Ake, I rate him. I think that Villa, they kind of threw it away against Spurs because they looked like they were going to be, running out even as winners for a lot of the game, for at least half the game. But there is a real lack of quality there, I think, for Villa, and a lot of players that still haven't really adjusted to the league. You're looking at Wesley. I don't really think he's going to have a good season at all, and I think going forward they're going to struggle, actually. So I'm going to say 1-0 Bournemouth.
Okay, the next game, Brighton versus West Ham. Really much of a nothing game. Brighton aren't going to do well. Brighton aren't going to do anything this season and then get relegated, as we said last week. But West Ham certainly aren't going to do anything special. Lanzini is coming back, but he's not necessarily fully fit yet and really getting himself into games. And maybe Brighton versus West Ham will finally be the chance for Haller to get on the score sheet for the first time this season. To me, it looks a bit bleak for Brighton. I don't think they're going to pick up any points, and I would probably go for 1-0 West Ham in this one.
Yeah, good opener for Brighton, winning 3-0. I think a lot of people didn't expect that, especially against Watford, who a lot of people are tipping for maybe an 11th place finish, 12th place finish, something like that. But, of course, as we said, going forward, I think they were very lucky. And there are players like Florian Andone who aren't actually good at all. And he just got really lucky. West Ham, it was obviously embarrassing, regardless if it's Man City or not, to lose 5-0 in your first game. And it looked like there were some real issues there. And I do think going forward, they are going to feel that. And I don't think that the fans are going to be pleased when their club doesn't finish in the top 10 this season, because they won't. But I'm going to say West Ham will get something out of this game, because Brighton have a lot of weaknesses. Obviously, last week we were explaining why we think they're going to get relegated. And at the end of the day, I still think West Ham aren't they're not a threat of relegation or anything like that. So I'm gonna say 2-1.
Okay, the next game, Everton-Watford. Moise Keane could well be making his first start for Everton in the league and, at home at Goodison Park as well. Watford, they haven't been too bad away from home, and, they've still got for very much the same squad that they had last year. They've made good defensive additions in Craig Dawson, who I felt, even though they lost that game against Brighton 3-0, I did think actually Craig Dawson played well. And considering the last time he was in the Premier League, when quite frankly he was god-awful, I think he's improved massively. And he looks like a very, very good, solid player. And he will do, in my opinion, very well for Watford this season. But Everton, wanting to impress at home, of course, it's one of their last seasons at Goodison Park, as they hope to build on the Riverside in Merseyside. And well, for me, I just don't see Everton losing this game. I just think that they are really going to be one to impress this season. Marco Silva wants to get that club back into Europa League, where he feels himself he should be managing. I think he's got the talent to do it, and this, to be fair, could be one of those games which really separates teams like Everton and teams like Watford this season. So I can only see it going one way. I'm going to go for something like a 2-0 Everton win.
Yeah, I do think Everton are going to have a strong season this time round. Obviously, 0-0 against Crystal Palace might be a little bit anticlimactic. It was a little bit of a dead game. But this time is going to be better, I think. Watford were showing a lot of defensive weaknesses, but I do agree Craig Dawson is a good addition because he had shown quality in the Premier League before. Obviously, that season where they went down West Brom, that wasn't so positive, but he had shown quality. And I think there are other players in there who are strong, like Abdoulaye Doucouré. He's a top-class midfielder. Roberto Pereira, I think on his day he can be a really class player as well. But I don't know. I think defensively they do have quite a few issues, and Everton are going to want to show that the money they spent is worth it. Moise Kean, I'd love him to score a goal, especially if he's starting. So I'm going to say 2-0 to Everton.
Okay, the next game, Norwich versus Newcastle. Now, a big hit for Norwich this week was when Farke announced that Onel Hernandez is out for 3 months with a knee injury after he fell over on the pitch, and that's not really a good sign for them, because last season in the Championship he was one of their most exciting wingers. But a big thing that while Christoph Zimmermann is going to be absent from the game this weekend, Mario Vranic is available. And he was one of their key goal-scoring midfielders, and he's great from set pieces. And so I feel that if Norwich can play a tactical game to force Newcastle to foul them and get set pieces with the delivery like Vranic, I think they could very well get someone on the end of it like Godfrey, and could well win the game through a set piece. Now, John Joe Shelby is fit for Newcastle, which is a very good sign for them. He's a key midfielder, but St Maxim is a doubt because of a hamstring injury, so that could well put the game kind of against Newcastle, and I feel Norwich could attack them. And I don't think Newcastle are going to have the attacking threat which they did have, certainly against Arsenal, where Alex St Maxim, for his first game in the Premier League, often we see League Un wingers, League Un strikers who come into the Premier League and they flop because the level isn't the same. But Maxim, and the same for Nicolas Pepe at Arsenal, I think looked very good. And so I've no doubt that St Maxim's going to hit the ground running really for Newcastle, and he could well be the saviour for them as Steve Bruce looks to try and keep Newcastle up, given their situation in terms of ownership and, well, I would say lack of investment, but Mike Ashley's actually put some money into the club, which is a bit embarrassing considering he let Rafa Benitez go, and how Rafa Benitez would have loved that same investment at the club when he was there. But I think that's just the way that Mike Ashley plays football. You leave, guess what, I'm going to invest some money now. But anyway, Norwich, Newcastle, well, I think playing away from home is going to be as important as their home form. And, well, Norwich, obviously, they played so well against Liverpool, they just couldn't get anything out of the game. Timo Pukki scoring in his first Premier League game, though, I personally think he will hit the ground running again at Carrow Road. And I'm going to go for another win. For the home side, it's going to be Norwich 2, Newcastle 1.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was quite unfortunate for Norwich. And we mentioned last week how they showed a lot of firepower. They did show a lot of desire against Liverpool. It's obviously Liverpool's attacking prowess was always going to outshine them. So it's a difficult one to call. Newcastle looked quite solid against Arsenal. It was a similar kind of story with the attack of Arsenal, of course, being quite amazing. But I don't know. I feel that they do have a real lack of quality. Again, it's like a midfield thing. When you got Isaac Hayden playing for you in the Premier League and you're Newcastle United, you must be thinking, oh, well, something's obviously wrong. And Norwich, as I said, they're exciting. I really do like the way they play, and I think the manager has got them in quite a good place this season. I don't actually think they're going to go down. Players like Stiepermann getting in good positions last week, obviously a bit wasteful. Timo Pukki, he's clinical. They've got decent defence, good goalkeeper. I don't see why they can't win this game. I'm going to go 2-0.
Harry, you're going to love this next game. It's Southampton versus Liverpool, Ralph versus Jurgen. And guess what's going to happen? Ralph's going to pull out a win. Liverpool, they played extra time in midweek. The players aren't going to be as rested as Southampton's. And you just know Che Adams is going to absolutely tear Lovren or Matip or Gomez, whoever plays, Van Dijk. I don't care if he's an ex-Southampton player. I don't care if he's been put up for the UEFA Men's Player of the Year. Che Adams is going to rip you a new one, son. And under the leadership of Ralph Hasenhüttl on the sidelines, who is quite frankly one of the most inspirational managers you could ever hear of. Can you tell we're biased yet? And so I personally think Southampton are going to come away with not only 1 point, but I reckon they're going to do what Ralph did against Arsenal last season. They're going to come away with all 3 points. I don't care how they win the game. Southampton 1, Liverpool 0.
Oh my goodness. You talk about Ralph there, made me damper than a panther. I love that. Well, I think Ralph is definitely one of the most inspirational managers in the Premier League. Whenever I see him, it does make me so happy. I think he's a great manager. I think he's so right for Southampton. And I know it was an embarrassing start this season. I know that a lot of people were disappointed, but it doesn't matter. As you said, Liverpool paid extra time. Ralph himself, the great Austrian, came out and said, yeah, I'm actually pretty happy they played extra time, to be honest. And he knows this is an opportunity. He knows this is going to be a repeat of that Arsenal game last year. He knows that his team are going to pull out a win. Southampton 3, Liverpool 2.
Oh, that's a big one, Harry. But talking about big, it's the biggest game of the weekend. It's Manchester City versus Tottenham. And, well, Tottenham, this is the game they've got to win. They want to prove themselves. They want to be up there beating Liverpool for second place, challenging Man City for first. They've got to win this game. But City at the Etihad, they are clinical. I mean, Leroy Sané, yes, he's out, but they didn't need him. They showed against West Ham. Mahrez looked as incredible level. You've got Bernardo Silva on the bench. He well could come in for Mahrez on the wing. And Sterling in fine form as ever. Jesus, Kun Aguero, they are just too strong. You will not get past them. Manchester City are going to smash Tottenham Hotspur this weekend. It's Man City 3, Tottenham 0 for me.
Wow, ruthless. I don't know what to say about this game because City are just too good. They're just too good. Like, you just look at the team. They didn't even bring on Bernardo Silva, who is one of the best midfielders in world football by a long way. And De Bruyne, he started and he was looking just as good as he was 2 seasons ago when he was by far the best midfielder in the world. And I just think this team is unbelievable. Going forward, they got so many options. Mahrez, he was so creative. Aguero, he's one of the best strikers the Premier League has ever seen. You know, Sterling, he scored a hat-trick on the first day, and he's just got everything. And the defence, it was looking good. John Stones, he's creative. You've got the best fullbacks by quite a way in the opening week, I thought. And Ederson in goal, of course. So Tottenham, they've got so much quality. Like, one of the best attacking forces that you'll see. Son, Kane, Eriksen, Ali, you name it. Of course, Ndombele had an amazing first game, and he was looking great in all respects. But is it really going to be enough? I don't know. I really don't know, because the fullbacks at Tottenham, are they going to be a little bit too inexperienced? I'm thinking about Kyle Walker-Peters. Is he going to struggle against the likes of City's attack? I think maybe he will. And so, I'm going to say City are going to prove their dominance, unlike Liverpool. And it's going to have to be 2-0 to City.
Okay, so why don't we end this episode with a quick fire for the last 3 games of the Premier League this week. And, well, Sheffield United, Crystal Palace, Chelsea, Leicester, and the big one on Monday, Wolves, Manchester United. So I'm going to kick you off. Sheffield United 1, Crystal Palace 0, Chelsea 3, Leicester 0. They're going to get their first win on the board under Frank Lampard. And on Monday, you know they're going to do it. It's Wolves 2, Manchester United 1.
I'm going to say Sheffield United 0, Crystal Palace 3. I'm going to say Chelsea 1, Leicester 3. And I'm going to say Wolves 0, Man United 0.
Okay, well, Harry has had his word. Harry has had his say. Let us know what you think of his dreadful predictions. Imagine putting Sheffield United to lose a game. You can contact us through the email, thefootballnatter@gmail.com. You can contact us on Twitter. Let us know what you think of this week's episode at the Football Natter 1, because like I said last week, there is only one. But that leaves me just to say thank you for Harry, and thank you for our special guest Ed for that lovely question on VAR. It's goodbye from Ed.
Goodbye, boys.
It's goodbye from Harry.
Goodbye, my children.
It's goodbye from me. Goodbye.